Hello, listeners. This is Roberta Foster, and welcome to today's edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. And today I welcome Kelly Goshorn and Cara Putman to Author's Corner. And these authors are just two of four women that have written the book Across the Shores. The other two authors are Angela Couch and Carolyn Miller. Across the Shores is published by Barbour Publishing, and they'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Kelly and Cara, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So how is it that you were invited to write a story that has a continuing theme between them, and how easy was that for you to do? Cara, why don't you start off that question?
Yeah, so it's always fun to be able to write together with other authors, because so much of writing is you and your computer and just this very solitary existence. So I love doing novella collections with Barbour because I get to write with other people. And so it was fun when Carolyn contacted me and said, hey, would you consider being part of this? Because number one, I got to return to World War II, which is one of my favorite time periods to write. And number two, I got to write with great author friends like Kelly, where I had this opportunity to kind of collaborate with them on this continuing connection across time periods and stories, which for this novella collection was a cross that was going to travel between the generations. And so Kelly, how did you get pulled into this collection?
Well, Angela invited me in. She had done a number of Barbour novella collections and wanted to give me an opportunity to write for Barbour. And so I was excited to be able to join, and I had a story percolating in my mind that just seemed to fit right in with what we were doing. So I was able to hop in that way.
I think it's fun that it was a different author that pulled each of us in, and it was so much fun when we would get online. There was a lot of Facebook stuff going on in the background on Messenger, where we would pop on and just this back and forth on, okay, so I'm thinking about this, and how does that work with your story? And just because we had so many different time zones, because Carolyn's in Australia, doing Messenger,
right,
messenger group that just went on for pages and pages and pages was a lot of how we collaborated.
And so what is the story theme that connects all four stories? Kelly, you want to tell us about that?
I think the overarching story theme touches on the verse in Philippians 4:13 that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The gold necklace that Cara mentioned that's passed through the generations has that engraved on it. And fun fact, Cara, correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, but I believe the first story is Carolyn's, and it takes place in the Australian gold mines, and they had a piece of gold that the hero found, which he made the necklace and engraving for.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's how that got started. So each one of our stories tries to tie in that theme, or the heroine. I know my heroine thinks on that a lot when she's in the difficult situations that I toss at her. That is a source of strength for her in her story.
And that's what's really fun, is you got these different heroes and heroines in different time periods in different countries, but they're all facing these challenging circumstances and relying on their faith as a way to not just survive, but overcome. And so in mine, there's U-boats, there's submarine attacks along the Atlantic seaboard in North Carolina. And so it's based on real events, but, they live on this barrier island and they're trying to survive, and just in the middle of everything is their faith that sustains them. And so it was fun to be able to explore these real events and real pieces of history, but then come back to these universal themes of finding strength in our faith. And that's woven through all the novellas that are in the collection.
So ladies, as you were researching the time frame that you wrote in, or even challenges that you wrote into your story, did you come across anything that blessed you personally?
I know for me, one of the things that I love about that World War II time period, and regardless of which particular story I'm pulling out of it, there's such a resilience in the people who were living during that time. I mean, there was such a coming together of people in a way that sometimes as I look around, and we saw some of it with the pandemic, we've seen some of it in moments like the post 9/11 world, and in moments like that where there's this just kind of collective coming together, but there was this sustained resilience for this entire 6-year period, and then the coming out of the post-war era. And that's part of what I think really draws me to that time period. It was my grandparents were young adults at that time, and really digging into what would it have been like to be a young adult at that time period and to go through those seismic events and really kind of we're all coming together, and we're going to be bound together by these events and by this unifying cause. And yet there's all these differences and these stories that were real events that we don't know about, and they're still coming to life almost 75, 80 years later. And so there's such a discovery that's still happening. And so I love that investigation and that, oh my gosh, this was happening there and this was happening at that point. And that generation's dying. My grandma literally just died at the end of October. And so we're losing that generation, but their stories can still be inspiring. And so I love bringing those to life.
So Kelly, was there the time that you wrote in the time frame, was that a special time of life that you enjoyed as well?
Well, I enjoy writing in the late 19th century, and the actual setting was kind of an accidental thing for me. But I think when I write a story, I often learn something about myself or God and how my relationship with him, will grow and get strengthened through what my characters are working through. And I'm always surprised by that. So for me in this story, my heroine wears a veil to hide away. And at the end of the story, I try to draw a comparison to the veil of the tabernacle and what it is like to have, how blessed we are that has been lifted, and we can have a relationship with God because there isn't that barrier. And that was one of the big takeaways for me from writing the story, was just really studying and learning more about what it would have been like to have that be the only way to access God before Christ. The sacrifices and, the priest, and not being able to access God directly. And just, it was just a blessing to be reminded of that and focus on.
Well, I'm talking with Kelly Goshorn and Cara Putman about the book Across the Shores, which is published by Barbour Publishing. And you're listening to Author's Corner. I'm Roberta Foster. And I think off the recording, I had asked Kelly if she had been a participant in a multi-author book before. So why don't both of you answer that question for me? Kelly, were you? And then Cara, you can follow her response.
This was my first opportunity to collaborate with other authors, and it was a wonderful experience. So I've already jumped into a collaboration with another group of authors, of which Angela Couch is also coordinating. So I had a really good time with it. It was fun not only to get to know the other authors, but to see how we take our ideas and tweak them, and how they develop, how the stories will develop, and all point the reader toward the same theme and towards this, what we can learn about that in ourselves. So that was great.
Yeah, and I love doing collections like this. This is probably my 5th, I think. I've got about 40 books out, but this would be the 5th or 6th collection that's like this, where they're all connected. And it's so much fun because it's that collaborative experience. And there's just a joy that comes from being able to work with other authors in this type of a collaborative environment. And so I really enjoy the opportunity to do that and to be supportive of other authors, and really to help introduce them to my readers, and really help kind of develop, hopefully, their base of readers. And so I love being able to do that, but then also be able to learn from them and see what they're doing with their writing and what I can learn from that process. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, Cara, did you find out something particularly interesting as you were writing your story?
I think when it comes to like the research and kind of the process. What was really kind of interesting as I was working on Lauren's song and the Along the Shores part of this collection was it's on the outer banks of the North Carolina kind of barrier islands, and I kept moving the island. So it was probably the fourth island before I went, nope, it is on Ocracoke, and it's going to stay on Ocracoke because it's based in a real time period, and there's real factors that have to come into play. I wasn't creating a barrier island. I wasn't creating boats that were being sunk by the U-boats. I was putting it very much in real events. I kept going, oh, it's going to be on this island. And I'd get it all plotted out, and I'd be like, nope, that one's not going to work. And then I'd move it to another island and be like, nope, this one's not quite right. And I'd move it to another one. I was like, this is getting ridiculous. I think I'm on my fourth island. And I finally just went, nope, I am putting a stake in the island. And this is it. I felt a little bit like a pilgrim or something. And the way I kept going, or, like Goldilocks, oh, too soft, too hard, just right.
That's funny.
Well, I guess that is one of the challenges of writing from a historical background. You have to be accurate, or somebody's going to be sending you a letter telling you, no, that isn't the way it is.
Yes, it's so true. And there's one crash or explosion on a boat where I had the survivors taken to my island instead of another, like 3 miles away. And I put it in the author's note. And I needed it to go where my hero was going to be. And I put that in the author's note. I'm like, in reality, it would have gone to this other Coast Guard station, but I had it come to this one for this reason. Because I know there's probably 2 people out there who would have known that I chose the wrong station. And I wanted everybody just to know that I made that choice for the purpose of the story, but I made it. It wasn't an accident. I intentionally moved where that one boat went. So, because someone would have emailed me and let me know and decided I didn't do my research. So.
Well, it's been a real pleasure talking with you ladies, and you'll be inspiring others to find out about Across the Shores. And so, Kelly, why don't you tell our listeners how they can find out more about this book?
Well, you can find out more about Across the Shores by going to Barbour Publishing. They'll have it on their website. You can also get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Christian Book. I think I've seen it on Walmart and Target.com as well. Yay. And it might be in Barnes & Noble's. I haven't been in one to see, but I wouldn't be surprised if you found it in a Barnes & Noble as well, if there's any of those physical bookstores left around you.
Kelly, why don't you tell us what you've got coming up next?
Oh, I have a Christmas novella coming out in October. Thank you for asking about that, Roberta. That's called The Christmas Carving, and it's part of a novella collection called Carved on the Heart. And each of the male descendants in this family are carving pieces of an heirloom nativity set.
Very good. Well, Cara, go ahead and share with our listeners what you're working on that they would have an opportunity to look for in the future.
So I have a Christmas novella collection coming out in September with Kriegel Publishing. And so that's We Three Kings. And then next year I have a full-length legal suspense that'll be coming out with Kriegel as well. So, and I have a collection coming out this summer. So lots of books coming out, and they can readers can always find out all about what's happening by following me on social media or checking out my website, which is just my name. So thanks so much for having us today.
And Kelly told me earlier that you also have a podcast. Cara, can you enlighten our listeners about that?
Absolutely. So it's Book Talk with Cara Putman, and on that I interview different authors. So it's a great way for readers to connect with their favorite authors and learn more about their books and their writing process. And it's available on pretty much every podcast platform, but they can also get links to all of them on my website. So caraputman.com/podcast.
Thank you. All right, so one more time, the book today is Across the Shores, and it's written by Angela Couch, Caroline Miller, Kelly Goshorn, and Cara Putman. And we certainly thank Barbour Publishing for giving us a copy of the book to talk about. And ladies, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks again.
All right, and to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join us again next time.